Shavua Tov, everyone. Welcome to video number 11 in our What's Up story group. Some of the important details in this story are so fantastic, almost unbelievable. I feel I should start out with telling its pedigree, so to speak, before actually telling the story. Perhaps you've heard of Rabbi Chaim Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. He was a leading Torah authority in the old city of Jerusalem for nearly 60 years, and including from 1909 to 1932, when he passed away, he was the chief Ashkenazic rabbi. It's from him that we know this story, and pretty much every written version of the story in Hebrew is from someone who heard him tell it, or heard it from someone who heard him tell it. So it would be very difficult to dispute the truth of the story. I call it the Widow's Kaddish. It takes place in Pressburg in the middle 1860s. Pressburg was at one point the capital of Hungary, and then the most important city in the Austrian-Hungary Empire. And today is the capital of Slovakia with a new name. Now it's called Bratislava. It also was the home to the largest yeshiva in Europe and one of the most respected, the Pressburg Yeshiva, founded by the Khatam Sofer, the famous Khatam Sofer, one of the most important halakhic authorities from the 1800s. And this story takes place in the middle 1800s. That there was a graduate of the yeshiva who became a very prosperous merchant. He had a large furniture store in downtown Pressburg. And he was a special person. One of his customs was quite unique, that every day, not every week or every month, every day he would go over his accounts for the day, calculate the profits from the income, separate 10% of the profits for a tithe, for Maisa money, and go over to the yeshiva and deliver it to the Rosh Yeshiva, who at this point was the son of the Khatam Sofer, the founder of the yeshiva, known as the Katav Sofer, Rabbi Avram Benjamin Schreiber. He passed away in 1875. Unfortunately, this wonderful man passed away at a relatively young age, and he left behind a wife, a widow, and 5 unmarried daughters. He was a well-known person in Pressburg, and everybody figured, well, the widow won't have any problem surviving economically when she sells the business, which could be sold for a fortune. That should be enough to marry off provide for the daughters' weddings and for her needs for the rest of her life. So they were all surprised when it turned out that she had decided to run the business herself. She had been very involved with her husband, and she felt capable to do this. And so she did, and the store continued to prosper. And she maintained her husband's wonderful habit of delivering every day 10% of the profits to the Rosh Yeshiva. And right away, as soon when her husband passed away, before she got involved in the store's business, she had already asked the Rosh Yeshiva that since she has 5 daughters but no sons, can he arrange for somebody in the yeshiva to say Kaddish for her husband for the 11 months, and then every year on the Yortzeit. The Katav Sofer, of course, agreed, and then she asked, but please have a second person also say Kaddish, every day. For whom? She said, for all those people who have no one to say Kaddish, all those souls who have no one to say Kaddish for them. So the Rosh Yeshiva agreed to this also. And so it went for weeks and months and several years, and that she would deliver faithfully the 10% of the daily profits, and the Kaddishes were being said as agreed upon in the yeshiva. But then the wheel of fortune spun and fell, and her business began, for some unknown reason, to do badly. And instead of profits, there were losses. She would still report regularly to the Rosh Yeshiva, but she would have to tell him that there's no profits to give you 10% from, but I hope that you're still saying the Kaddishes. And he assured her that they would. One evening, there was a knock on her door, and it was one of the local matchmakers. And the matchmaker said, "My dear madam, perhaps you're so involved in your business that you haven't noticed that all five of your daughters are of marriageable age. But don't worry, that's not a problem. I can find outstanding young Torah scholars in the yeshiva for them. Just tell me how much of a dowry you want to settle on each one of them." So she maintains the presence of mind to tell him that she'll think it over. But as soon as he left, she started crying. When she was able to put herself back together, she went right away to speak to the Rosh Yeshiva and told him about how terrible she feels about the business going down. I mean, the main people in the yeshiva were really the only ones who knew about her situation. Nobody knew, but they all understood that she was close to going out of business. She said she had even had to sell some jewelry to put food on the table. As they were talking, all of a sudden there was a knock on the door, and a man came in, an elder, distinguished-looking man. And he asked her, "Are you the widow of so-and-so?" And she said, "Yes." And he said to her, I'd like to be able to help you." And then he turned to the Rosh Yeshiva and said, is it possible that we can go into a private space? And he asked the Rosh Yeshiva also to send for two of his senior students to be witnesses to what would happen. So the Rosh Yeshiva sent for his son, Rabbi Shimon Schreiber, who would be his eventual successor, and Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, as I said, from whom we know this story, because he was part of the story. When they came in, so the man turned to the widow and said, "I know that you have 5 daughters that need to get married. I would say that to make a wedding, you would need 1,000 kroner for each one of them, Kroner, that was the name of the currency. I would guess that the 1,000 kroner would be at least $10,000 in today's economy, at least $10,000, probably more." He said, "So I will give you $1,000 for each of your daughter's weddings, and then they'll need another 1,000 kroner, and they'll need another 1,000 kroner in order to set up their homes. So that's 2,000 for each one. That's 10,000 kroner altogether. Plus, I also want to give you 10,000 kroner another 10,000 kroner to help get your business back on its feet. So that's altogether 20,000 kroner." Took out a checkbook, wrote her name on it, and wrote in it of 20,000 kroner, and he signed it. But before giving it to her, he asked the 2 rabbis who had been called in as witnesses to please sign on the back of the check, certifying that, so the people would understand that they accepted that this is indeed the man's signature. And he asked them to take out their personal notebooks. He wants to sign in each of their notebooks as proof of his signature. So they all did this, and he wrote the check. He gave it to the window and said, "Tomorrow morning, when the main bank, the government bank, opens, so you can present this, and they'll cash the check for you." And he turned around and left. Well, during this whole time, everybody was stunned. The Rosh Yeshiva, the widow, the 2 rabbis, the 2 young rabbis, relatively young rabbis. Finally, one of them said, "Wait a moment, this man, he should really be able to help the yeshiva too." And he went running out to catch up to him and to discuss it with him, but he wasn't able to find him or any trace of him. So the next morning, the widow went to the bank, and she presented to the teller the check, and the teller said, "Wow, this is a huge check. Let me look up the account and see if there is indeed enough money in the account to cover it." So he went to the ledgers, and he came back and he told her, "Yes, there is enough money in this account to cover the check, but I'm not authorized to cash such a large check. It has to be ratified by the president of the bank, the manager of the bank." He said, just wait here one moment. I'll go ask him, and I'll come right back. So he went over to the manager of the bank, and he said, I was presented a check for 20,000 kroner, and there's enough money in the account to cover it, but can I give the money? The manager said, let me see the check. He took a quick glance at the check, and he fainted right on the floor. It was pandemonium. People were screaming, people were running back and forth, nobody what to do. The police came, they asked what was going on. When they told her it was because of this check that this woman brought, they took the woman and they locked her in a room. A doctor finally arrived, and he revived the bank manager, and the bank manager's first words were, where is that woman who brought the check? They said, don't worry, we have her locked up in a secure place. He said, no, you mustn't do that to such a special woman. I want to go to her right now. So they took him to the room where the woman was, and he asked her, where did you get this check? And she told him the whole story about her being a widow, her unmarried daughters, her failing business, and her relationship with the Rosh Yeshiva, etc. And the story of how this elderly man had come the evening before and given her the check. So he said to her, if you saw this person again, would you recognize him? And she said, yes. He said, would you recognize him from a portrait? She said, yes. And then she told him, by the way, there were two witnesses. He asked for there be two witnesses there, these two young rabbis, and he signed in their books his signature. So the bank manager was very excited to hear that, and he sent a messenger to the yeshiva requesting that please, these two rabbis should join him at the bank. So when they arrived, he took them and the widow to a room, a nice room, and he said, we have to wait here for my wife to come. I'm sending somebody to tell my wife to come because if we're going to cash this check, she has to endorse it also. Sorry, I left something. I gotta start.